Chinese treasure fleet.
How many ships are in this fleet?
317.
317. And what are the really big ones? Do you remember?
No.
Those are the large treasure ships. So nobody can know exactly how many of the large treasure ships, the ones that were 1.5 football fields large, were out in the first 1405 expedition of the treasure fleet, but they assumed maybe 4. And then the rest of the ships, something that they called horse ships, were the other ships that went out all at once. Now, I don't think that all of these ships went into one port at the same time, but they did take off at the same time. That is a lot. Can you imagine what a sight that must have been, Eli? No. It took us a really long time to even just put these on the table. I can't imagine building this many ships. Hi friends, it's Miss Emily again, and we are gonna just do one other little exercise about communication between the treasure fleet ships. So we made it a little bit dark in our house, and I'm gonna read you a little bit from a book about treasure fleet ships. So I'm gonna turn this camera around. Communication at sea between the various vessels of the treasure fleet was made possible by an elaborate system of sound and sight signals. All ships were equipped with one large flag, signal bells, 5 banners, 1 large drum, gongs, and 10 lanterns. Sound signals were used to issue commands on board, and drums, loud enough to be audible between neighboring ships, warned the fleet to seek safe harbor if a storm was approaching. Lanterns were used to convey signals at night or in foul weather, and carrier pigeons were employed for long-range communication. I've never seen a carrier pigeon, but now I want to. Each ship could be identified by its special color and a black flag with a large white character indicating to which squadron it belonged. So we're going to choose 3 ways, maybe 4, to communicate, and you're going to try to remember what we're communicating with what we choose to do. Okay, so it's going to be dark so that you can really hear the sound. And this is going to be the first signal that we're going to choose to communicate. And you try to remember what it is used for in the Chinese treasure fleet. Okay, so did you recognize that sound? Yes, it was a drum. And do you remember what it was used to communicate? Yes, the drums were used to communicate between ships, warning to take safe harbor for storms and foul weather. Okay, this one won't be a perfect match for the sound, but go ahead, Eli. So I'll give you a clue. It starts with a G and ends with an ong. So yes, the gong was used often to communicate commands on board. I can only imagine if you're out at sea and just trying to get sound to carry, that you would need something other than just your voice. Have you ever tried to yell for someone at the ocean to get their attention? It's really, really hard, right? Okay, this will be our next sound. It's meant to help us experience the sound of the signal bells that might be aboard a ship. Now they might have had like a really big bell, but this is the only bells we had in the house. One more time, good. at fault. Okay, this is our last one.
Oh, wait, how do I?
Did you catch it? So that's our attempt at using light, or how they use lanterns, to communicate between ships. What? I hope you guys had fun doing that exercise. We had a lot of fun thinking about trying to communicate. And maybe you could come up with some ideas this month, like ways to communicate with your siblings, or ways to communicate, just imagining if you were in a place where words or yelling or things wouldn't work, like what would work to communicate between yourself. And there are some thick books about these expeditions and about the Yongle Emperor and about Yung Ha and the treasure fleet. And we have definitely chosen to focus just on a small part about the traveling and the building of the ships and the kinds of ships. And that's just what we're going to do for this year. But maybe as you grow and you, as you read more about exploring and history, more things will come up about what was going on at this time, or how this treasure fleet, stopped exploring, and then how the explorers that we're going to continue talking about as we go were exploring all the way on the other side of the world without realizing 100 years before that this was going on. But one last thing I wanted to say, because I thought it was a really cool image. I couldn't find any bamboo around my house, but if you have some bamboo, or in your neighborhood, if you go on a walk and you see bamboo, or you're somewhere and you find a bamboo stalk, something that was really cool about these particular ships is that the strength of these treasure ships was created by mimicking something else in China, the bamboo stalk. So it says it had watertight bulwark compartments modeled after the multi-chambered structure of a bamboo stalk. The treasure ships also used a balanced rudder that could be raised and lowered, creating additional stability like an extra keel. A balanced rudder placed as much of the rudder forward of the stern post as behind it, and made such large boats as the treasure ships easier to steer. Neither bulwark compartments nor stem posts and balanced rudders were introduced into European shipbuilding until the late 18th century or early 19th century. And as you guys have been working on timelines, remember the 18th century means the 1700s, and the 19th century means the 1800s. And when we're talking about the treasure fleet, we are talking about the 1400s. So really kind of a cool thing to think about. And I like to think about the bamboo, and that was one of the reasons the ships were less susceptible to sinking, was because they could make a watertight compartment in between these sections in case they hit an iceberg or a reef or ran aground. They could shut off a compartment of the ship and still go on sailing and exploring. And I thought that was a cool thing to think about, especially this week, because we were talking a little bit about glaciers in science. And I was thinking, pretty smart. I don't know that I would have thought of that. Well, actually, I know I wouldn't have thought of that. I don't build ships. It took me a long time to even just go to the store and buy those goldfish to make the treasure fleet. Okay, I hope you guys are having a good week just learning and exploring and being together. And I hope I get to see you soon.